Hey everyone, Tina Hogan Grant here with my Cuppa A Natter that I like to do twice a month on a Monday. I bring authors into my home. We talk about books, writing, life as an author, and whatever comes to mind. And tonight, Julie Rogers is joining me. How are you this evening, my dear?
I'm fine, Tina. Thank you so much.
I am so happy to have you. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I am actually broadcasting from my phone tonight. So, readers, bear with me. I don't usually do this, but my internet is just being not behaving today. So, Julie, thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your patience, but we'll get through this. And before we begin, can you just let us know where you're joining us from?
I'm joining you actually from Georgetown, Texas, which is north of Austin. I know
Oh,
on my website I mentioned I live in Eureka Springs, and we are moving there in about 5 months.
nice. That is one state I would love to visit is Texas. Is Texas.
Well, don't visit in the summer.
Okay.
It's hot. It's very hot.
Okay. It's one. The people just seem so friendly. Have you been there your entire life?
Yes, I was born here, and I've been back and forth. Lived in Arkansas, New York, across the pond. Several places. So I've kind of been all over the place.
Nice. Well, it says a lot about Texas that you've been there your entire life.
And
Hopefully
mhm.
one day I'll make it there. Before we get started talking about your books, we do have a few people joining us, and I'm going to be very careful as I do this because I am on my phone. But I want to pop up some names. We've got Karen here. She says hello,
Hi,
and
Karen.
another Karen Geerling is here. We have Darlene Johnson. Karen says, I was wondering what happened. Yes, Karen, my internet was being unreliable. So I am using my phone. I don't like my angle, what I'm looking at, but hey, we're doing this. And Julie has been so patient. We have Clana here. She's joining us. Lori Chasco is here. Darlene Johnson. So, Julie, your latest book is called Falling Stars.
That's correct.
That's correct. And how many books have you written?
This is number 7.
Congratulations.
Yeah, of my
And
own. Now, I've ghostwritten a lot more. I
okay,
ghostwrite, so I've done around 50
50?
ghostwriting.
Did you say
Yeah,
50?
50. Yeah.
Wow. And how long have you been writing, whether it be for yourself or as a ghostwriter?
I started in high school. I started ghostwriting about 10 years ago, and I had to take a brief hiatus to care for my parents. They both were very elderly, so sad news, but they both passed away. And then I jumped back into it again, and I absolutely love it. After their deaths, I wrote Falling Stars. I had it in my mind for a while. Yeah,
Okay. So can you tell us a little? Do you have a copy of the book next to you so we can
I
see the
do.
cover?
Yes.
Yay.
Actually, I have taken it out of ARC mode, and so this is the nice, thick, new book.
I love it.
So yeah, yeah.
I love the bold font.
And nice big print inside. 12-point pica. The other was 10, and it was too small.
Perfect. So can you tell us a little bit about the book? I got a couple of questions that you can just roll into one answer. Is number one, what inspired the book, and a little background about the book without giving too much away.
Sure. Yeah, it was a convergence of many things. I actually outlined this book in 2001, and I wrote it as a screenplay. And at the time, I had won the Writer's Digest. Words coming together. I had won the Writer's Digest grand prize for a short story, but I knew that I couldn't pitch a short story in New York as a book. So I went to Maui Writers Convention and pitched Falling Stars as a screenplay. And they didn't go for it. It didn't get a green light. I kind of put it back. And because I had a 9-year-old boy in this story, I wanted to wait until my son was 9 so I could really kind of live through that and see what was going on. But 20 years later, I pulled it out after my parents' death. My dad had multiple myeloma, which is a bone marrow cancer. It was a very difficult 4 years with him. But he was very brave, and going through that kind of experience with cancer, and that wasn't my first one, but I went, this is the big bad monster to me. This is something, the pandemic is nothing compared to how many people suffer with cancer, and the fact that we have not found anything. There's no cure, there's remission, but it's just it's such a monster. And so I decided to pull this story back out because even originally in 2001, I had my protagonist having cancer. So in Falling Stars, 9-year-old Tommy Lucas has a blood cancer, and he needs a bone marrow transplant to survive within the next 6 months. But Tommy creates this entire fantasy around his disease process, and he decides that he's a vampire. He decides that this is worse. He decides he's a vampire. He's like, I'm a vampire mom. And his mom is an oncologist. So she allows him to play out this fantasy up to a point, because she doesn't want him to lose hope. And that is part of her own medical philosophy. She believes that her patients get better and stay better as long as they have some kind of hope to hang on to. So she allows him to do this. So Tommy starts researching vampires, and he finds an online e-zine about a vampire that he believes is much like himself. He's actually a dampire, which means he's a vampire human hybrid in this story. And Tommy's reading about him. This vampire was a Viscount from Cardiff. He traveled from Cardiff to Eureka Springs, Arkansas in 1939, seeking a cure for his own leukemia. And he went to Norman G. Baker's Cure for Cancer Hospital. So Tommy, as he's reading this story, he and his mom are living in Eureka Springs. They've moved back from Chicago, and Tommy has grandparents there, surrounding family, so forth. And so Tommy says, I really think this fellow is still here. I'm going to find him. And that becomes Tommy's quest. Tommy meets an artist in Eureka Springs who has a very successful studio. He paints racehorses. And this artist is very concerned because he is Viscount Claudius Fallon in disguise. And so the story becomes about, when does Tommy and everyone else discover that there is a vampire living in their midst, or will they? And of course, the Viscount is also attracted to Tommy's single mom, and there's a little bit of a love interest there too. So without giving too much away, we have to see whether Tommy will survive, whether the vampire can stay under wraps, all that kind of stuff.
I'm intrigued, and I'm definitely going to check this book out because I'm a cancer survivor. I had breast cancer in 2011. And you write about being no treatment. So many people die from cancer. It's a horrible, horrible disease. And of course, since I was diagnosed with it, it changes you forever. It just changes you forever. It's like next month, November, I go for my annual checkup with my oncologist and the MRI and the ultrasound. And you don't relax until you get the results. And then it kind of eases out throughout the year. And then all of a sudden it's around again. November is that month where it's like, am I going to be another year in remission, surviving? So, up until I get those results in November, it's like tent city. So it just absolutely changes you. It does. And I'm sorry for your parents passing away. Did your mother have cancer also?
No, she did not. Now, she had breast cancer, but they caught it soon. And her mother, my maternal grandmother, died of melanoma, which is another form of cancer. Yeah. So I've kind of been surrounded by it in many ways, but no, she did not. And it's just you're right. It does change you. And so I gave a lot of weight in the story to the oncologist, June's mom, and how she managed cancer, because as I went through it with my dad, I found a number of oncologists that I really admired that, were doing the best with what they had to work with. I'll put it that way. And we're being actually very creative in the way to manage someone that elderly having to go through chemotherapy or immunotherapy or whatever. I mean, it takes a real finesse. And so I kind of fused all of that into June. And so in the first chapter, when I'm introducing her and Tommy, I'm introducing her whole philosophy of how she treats cancer. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is what prompted me. I mean, you've been writing for a lot longer than I have. I started writing in 2018, but like you, I had the story 20 years ago. But it wasn't until I got diagnosed with cancer that made me realize, I don't know how many days I have left. It's just really your outlook on life. You take it for granted that you're going to be around forever. You can get everything done. You got plenty of time to do what you want to do in life. But boom, when you get that diagnosis, it's like, okay, if I want to write this book, I better stop messing around and start doing it. And that's what prompted me to start my writing career. It's because I got diagnosed with cancer, and you just don't know how long you have.
Yeah.
So, I'm definitely intrigued with your story. You said you had the idea for the story how long ago? I'm sorry.
In 2001. I actually wrote it as a treatment for a screenplay and pitched it. Yeah.
Right. And then how long did it actually take you from sitting down and starting to write the book as a book, not as a screenplay, to where it got published?
I started in 2021. So it was about a year and a half.
Okay.
And I really put myself on a schedule. I knew that I could spend forever, working on it. And I only wrote about 3 hours a day. So I would go to Panera Bread, have my soup, have my bagel or whatever cookie.
Right.
And when it was quiet, and I would only do about 3 hours a day. That was like my magical place. But I realized I wasn't getting anything done. And so what I did is I sat down, outlined the whole book. And I said, okay, chapter 1, I've got to have that finished by chapter 2. And I just went all the way through all 18, 19 chapters and did that. I'm going to have it by that month, because I had dated myself into this book. This book actually starts happening in contemporary times this Thanksgiving, November 20th. Oh. And so I told myself I will never do that again. It was really dumb, but I did it. I wanted to have a date on there, because one of the things that really bothered me, I was trying to be very realistic about this, the real world, the magic in the real world under our noses where we may not see it. And one of the things that I wanted to address was the outcome of the pandemic. But I knew if I got too far away from the outcome of the pandemic, it would be so skewed. I wouldn't really have any idea what was going to happen. And I could only see so far out. My husband is a family practice physician. So, he was able to kind of help me. Okay, this is probably what's going to happen with the vaccines. This is probably what's going to happen with this. But there were a lot of unknowns as far as, how many people are going to still be wearing masks and what kind of precautions and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't want to date it too far out. But by May, I was shaking in my boots. I had to have it done by May.
You got to get done.
So it was launched May 16th. For better or worse.
There you go. Yeah. And with my books, the last 2 that I wrote, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I don't want these to fall into the COVID pandemic. I just don't, because people already had enough of COVID. They don't want to pick up a book and start reading about COVID too. It was just too much. So I was glad at the end of my series that it ended right before the pandemic. Yeah. I just couldn't do it. I do want to pop up a couple of comments, because a lot of our readers here are going to be related to this book. Dana has quite the story. She is a cancer survivor, and she is amazing. I know her story, and she's a miracle. She really is. But I know she can relate to your book. She also put this up. I can't pronounce that, Dana. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah.
And then we have another cancer survivor here. Kleina, she is a survivor. I mean, your book is going to touch so many people. Dana says, enjoy one day at a time. When you came to writing this book, you said you wrote a screenplay. Did you need to plot the novel of the book, or did you just sit down because you had the guidelines to the screenplay? Did you just kind of write and just, let it unfold as a book, or did you actually
Having the
do some
screenplay
plotting?
treatment, in mind did help. But when I started deciding who the vampire was going to be and what his life was going to be even before Tommy came along, I knew I was looking at a whole lot of history. And so I've really got two parallel stories. I've got the beginning of World War II, the vampire coming to America on the last civilian voyage of the Queen Mary, and all that history that goes with that. And then I've got, him in America being cured and then continuing to live through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and so forth. Now, I don't go through all of that in, blow by blow, but you're very aware of what he's seen as he's lived here in the heartland. It's different from, he grew up in Cardiff and he's a noble, and now he's just a guy here in Eureka Springs and living under wraps, but a very talented artist who makes a very good business for himself, but has to develop a way to stay off the grid. And so he has a very special way that he confuses people's memories so they don't really realize that he's not getting any older and he's been there for so long. And so, here comes Tommy. But the fun part about writing this book, I will say this, and I don't want to get too far off, but the fun part is I look back at Bram Stoker and how he basically outlined Dracula. And it was journal after letter, this person, that person, so forth. And so I used the Phyllis Argosy e-zine as a central hub. So you have this e-zine that is writing this story about this urban legend called Viscount Claudius Fallon, and basically telling just enough of his story that made Tommy believe that, he is still in Eureka Springs. He's just hiding. And so there's 5 parts. And at the end of each part, you go to a different character who's reading the book. Tommy, the vampire himself, Tommy's mother, and so forth. So you get into their head and how they respond to it. And the vampire's worried because, this really could expose him. And the way this e-zine got their material was the deputy that had to bring him over to the hospital wrote in his logs, and they got his logs and started fabricating this story. So that becomes part of it too, his whole history. I felt like that in order to know what he does with Tommy, in order to know what Tommy does with him, you really have to get to know him as a vampire as well.
Interesting. What genre would you say this book is?
That was a hard one because originally I was thinking magical realism. That just resonated with me. But when I worked with PR by the Book, my publicist said, no, this is an urban fantasy. You cannot call it anything else. And so really it has hit those points better than magical realism. Yes.
Okay, and will this be a standalone, or do you think there's going to be some more books to continue on from this one?
It's hard to know.
You sound like me.
I wish I could say. I love series when they're done well. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge, though. When you put it all out there in the first series to really follow that, and I just don't know. I don't know. I've had people ask me if they will, if I'll continue this story. Mm-hmm. I don't know yet.
Okay. I'm curious. Okay. Do your characters talk to you when you're writing?
Do I what now?
Do your characters talk to you while you're writing?
I wouldn't say they actually talked to me. Actually, yeah, I would say that Tommy was one that when I started getting into his head and going round and round with him, I had a lot of fun. That was kind of an inner child in me that came out that I didn't realize was even there. So yeah, I would say yes.
Okay,
Definitely
the
Tom.
reason I asked is because that's how I figured out with my books if they were going to be a series or not. Because when I was done with the first book,
Hmm.
they wouldn't shut up. I could still hear them. So, okay, they've got more to say. So I'm going to continue on and see how far this goes. So that's why I was asking if maybe your characters talk to you because they'll let you know.
Yeah, I think Tommy will let me know. I just have to see. I'm just not really sure. I haven't
Right.
set out to make it a series. My first beta reader, one of the very first ones, said, "Okay, I'm waiting for the second one." Oh boy.
Now, this book has won many awards.
Yes, it's 1/6.
It's one six. Can you just tell us what those awards are? Because
Yeah,
congratulations,
let
by the
me
way.
grab the paper here because I don't want to say anything wrong.
Okay.
There we go. So the first one I was really excited about because all of these are category awards, and so I entered it in urban fantasy, and it won the 2023 International Firebird Book Awards first in urban fantasy, and then it won the 2023 Pinnacle Book Awards Best Book in Fantasy, and then the Global Book Awards Bronze in Fantasy, the Global Book Awards finalist in vampire books, the Hollywood Book Festival first runner up, and the American Fiction Awards finalist in fantasy. So
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I just went crazy, Tina. I worked with another publicist after PR by the book, and he said, you need to enter that thing in some awards. And I hadn't entered contest in years. And so I was like, okay, how? No, I didn't say that, but I went out through a real good company called Book Award Pro and just put it in there and entered
Perfect.
way too many.
You know what? It's nice recognition. I didn't do any this year or last year, but I did know I did one in 2022 and 2023, and I did win the gold medal. So that was nice. But
Yeah.
I haven't done any. I didn't enter any this year or last year. I was too busy doing writing and other stuff. So, but what was the name of the company you went through?
Book Award Pro,
I'll
a
have to look
very
them
good
up.
company. Yeah, look
They
them
can do
up.
it for me.
Yeah, you can join free or you can join with a little membership and they'll match your book to
All right. I
you
might
know,
do some next year, but I didn't do
yeah.
any this year. I don't think I did. I don't think I did any this year. I do want. We have quite a few questions, so I'm going to put some questions up for you. I do
Okay.
have to touch my phone very gently because I'm not used to working on my phone. Hold on 1 second. I want to. And some new people have joined us. Let's see your book one more time for the
Okay.
latecomers. We're talking about her latest book, Falling Stars. Sounds very intriguing. Beautiful cover. We have Connie here. She says hello.
Hello,
And we
hello.
have someone in the group. My group is private, so I can't see your name. But thank you for joining us. I want to pop you up too. And I'm going to scroll up and see some of these brilliant questions I saw. Aklena says urban fantasy. Interesting. I haven't heard of that genre before. What genre do you normally write in, Judy, while I'm looking for the questions?
Yeah, and she brings that up a good point. Urban fantasy is very new. It's a spin-off of fantasy. And it's the idea that you set something in an urban area. And so you have all this reality around you that's connected to being a city, but then you may have the flying monkeys on the roof and they happen to be the teenagers with their phone. I mean, it's kind of, the magic underneath you that you don't see in the urban area. But yeah, my first book was nonfiction. I wrote about divorce recovery. That was my first book.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what about your ghostwriting? Do you write a specific genre or do you do a
I've
variety?
been pulled into a lot of different stuff, both, screenplays, stage plays, novels, nonfiction, memoirs, you name it. I just finished book packaging one for a fellow that's about Battle of the Bulge. And so, it's just, that's a historical fantasy or historical fiction rather. And so, yeah, I wish I could say it was a fantasy, but it's not. Historical fiction. And, but yeah, just everything, children's YA, and the ghostwriting really helped me grow up as a writer, because I had written a long time, but I just sort of hit and miss my own stuff. Then I had to be responsible for what I was doing with these people, or they wouldn't be very happy with me. And I had to create what they wanted. So it really, it made me grow up in so many different ways, and I'm glad that I've done that.
So with your ghostwriting, you pretty much take someone's idea of a story and you turn it into a full-fledged book.
Yeah, and it can go many different ways. I've talked to other ghostwriters about this. They can have it, like in this case with this fellow, he had it all written. It just needed to be really edited with some light ghostwriting. With others, they may just have a single sentence. I want to write a book about this, but I just don't have time. Go do it. Others, I've had one fellow that would outline to the nines, and he was a great outliner. I mean, and it would always fit. I was amazed. I was like, I wish I could outline like you do. And, so I get people in all different walks of life that need a ghostwriter for different reasons,
Do you ever mention any of the books you've ghostwritten? Is that against protocol?
It's against it if I've signed an NDA. Now, sometimes they want to mention me, and that's fine if they choose to, but that has to be, a written agreement that,
right,
I'm going to give you credit type thing. But most of the time it's work for hire. There are a lot of professionals that they just don't have the time to write, but they've got a good nonfiction idea, and they want to get it out there, and they're going to, go speak about it and sell it type thing.
And how long do you spend on a ghost book for somebody?
A lot of it depends on how many words and how complex it is. There was one that I was working on where I literally, the author was sending me MP3s as she drove down I-35 and talked to her phone. And, so I was having to kind of decipher out. I had to, in other words, basically take it down as dictation first and then go in and write. And that can be very time consuming. Because I knew that she wanted, a certain flavor in this, and I had to follow it. But generally, like if it's a book that's 70,000 words, around that amount, I can generally knock that out in 2 or 3 months.
Oh, that's good.
At the very least, yeah. I wrote a screenplay this summer, so I mean that was like a 2-month, 45 days, something like that.
And this is your full-time work, writing, ghostwriting, author. This is
yeah. I mean, a lot of times my stuff gets put on the back burner. Anything that new that I'm trying to generate, usually it's all I can do to do the ghostwriting and promote what I've already got out there. I'm finding.
You're wearing many hats. I do want to put this up. Lisa Murray, her daughter is also going through cancer. So I want to recognize Lisa's daughter and wish her well. We're praying for her. Karen Wright, these are the questions I was looking for earlier. Karen's asking, what genre won't you read? I'm going to put in there write too. Is there a genre you won't read or write?
Let me think about that a minute. Probably not. I mean, I've done romance. Sometimes some of the stuff that people get into that's too graphic, that really bothers me, because I just don't want to go there with my energy. So I stay away from really graphic stuff. And that was one thing about Falling Stars, that, my first readers, I didn't want to disappoint anybody, but I was like, this is not your typical vampire story. This is not going to be bloodthirsty graphic. This is really, if you love history, if you have had cancer or know someone who's had cancer, this book is going to speak to you, but it is not your, slasher type stuff. And I would say that would be about the only genre that I would stay away, or type stuff I would stay away from.
Okay.
Especially if I feel like it's unnecessarily graphic, that it doesn't
Right.
really fit the story.
Right. They're just putting in there for kicks. Dana's asking, do you have a favorite author?
Oh my goodness. There's so many. Yeah.
I know, it's hard.
One that I really admire, and you don't hear much about her anymore, but I used to read her all the time, was Annie Dillard. And she's
Yeah,
the living, about the settling of Puget Sound, just incredible. I was always amazed by how much research she did to put those books together, because she's talking about settlement times in the United States, and her language, the way she spoke, very, very poetic to me, much more poetic than the way I write. But yeah.
Oh, I have to look her up. I've not heard of her, but
Mm-hmm.
I will look at.
She's an old one. She's an old one.
Is she? I'm sorry. Is she still alive? Did you say she's still alive?
I think she is. She is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Laura's asking, do you like quiet or relaxing music when you write?
Yeah, I do. In fact, in Falling Stars, there is a theme song, and it's Brahms' Opus. Forgive me if I say 39, number 15, I believe. There's so many. But it's a very short and sweet waltz. And to me, it was, speaking about often the brevity of life. I mean, when you consider a human life compared to all of history. So, yeah. And so in the book, I have the vampire actually play it on the radio. And he and the security officer who are there as they travel across the United States in 1939 are listening to this waltz. And it was one of the vampire's sister's favorite. So I listened to a lot of Brahms.
Wow.
Okay. A lot of Brahms. I would just turn it on Alexa and just go away.
Wow, I like that. Okay, a couple more questions that are popping up here I want to put up. Dana is asking, do you have a favorite place to write?
Yeah, that's changed, David. I literally should have bought stock in Panera when I wrote this book, because I went to Panera every day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
And had my 3 hours during the quiet time before everybody piled in. And that was that kept me going. But now I have an office that I have here at home. And so that's really, I do it out of necessity, particularly when I'm working for other people, because I have to stay so focused. And, if I'm writing for myself, I'll usually actually go out to a coffee shop or something. I like to
be in a crowd.
To breathe.
Yeah, I tried one time going to Barnes and Nobles to do a writing session. I spent more time browsing the books than I did getting any words on paper or computer. So, and for me, I mean, everyone is different, but for me, I have to have complete silence. I can't have music. I can't have talking. I can't have being in a room of a coffee shop. So I admire you that you can actually focus and shut out what's around you.
Well, I've got a little secret about that, and I don't mind telling everybody, because I mean, hey, here we are, right?
Yes, sir.
But my mother had rubella when I was still in the first trimester, and so I was born with a lot of congenital problems from rubella, and one of them is a congenital hearing loss. Now I'm wearing hearing aids now, so with hearing aids I get about 95%, something like that. But with them off, I don't hear a blame thing. So, I just take them off, go to Panera, Someone could say, "Hi, Julian."
Well, that's not my mom. She passed
So,
away. But
it's a blessing in disguise for that kind of
yeah, it
thing.
is. And my mom used to say the same thing. My mother wore hearing aids.
Yeah.
And, I'd be talking to her. She came over here and visited from England. And she wouldn't hear me. I go, Mother, are you switched on? You know, it was like a little joke between us. And when she didn't want to hear me, she just shut me out. She just turned them off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, brilliant. I want to take a little break because I didn't check with you because of my technical difficulties. But are you still able to do a live read for us?
I can. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. How much time do you have?
It doesn't matter. We can keep going. We're fine for time. 5 to 10.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do is fine. But I want to hand it over to you. It's all yours, and I'm going to be quiet.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I'm going to read pretty late in the book. This is like, the last little part. And it's actually where Tommy meets the vampire for the first time, but he doesn't know that he's a vampire. And the way I have to give you a little background because I had mentioned earlier in the show that the vampire has been living in Eureka Springs since 1939. He was cured at Norman Baker's Cheerful Hospital. And he has developed quite a business. He is a very successful racehorse painter. So he traveled a lot to go, actually see the horses raced and then paints them and has his studio. He has a special like mess with your memory thing that he can do so that nobody really knows why this 36-year-old man never ages and has been there since 1939. They're like, oh, he's been there about 5 years, that type of thing. So anyway, he paints in a cave. I just had to include that theme. So he has a cave that is near Tommy's school. Tommy goes to a Catholic school at the rectory, the historic rectory there in Eureka Springs. So anyway, one other little tidbit that I want to give you, and this won't give away, believe me, it won't give away too much of the story, Tina, so don't worry. I decided to have him consult Jonathan Frid for Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows, of course, was the TV show that was back in the 60s, 67 through 69 was the big time when Frid joined, and he was Barnabas Collins. So I decided I would have my vampire consult Frid. And so that's why this comes up in this reading. Okay. So I'm talking about the vampire, and he has taken an assumed name, Callan Masters. And so the vampire Claudius Fallon is actually Callan Masters. He had just pulled into the parking lot behind the rectory, locked up, and started down the trailhead when he picked up the scent. He checked his watch. He had an extra few, and by the odor, he knew the sickly one was very close by. So he backtracked several yards toward the edge of the parking lot out of curiosity and stood behind a tree, watching the activity around the Woody. Now, the Woody is a 1937 Packard that the vampire drives and has driven since 1939. So that the Woody is in the parking lot. The sickly kid never heard them coming, unfortunately. 3 hoods that rode the streets downtown on stripped out mountain bikes looking for trouble. Callan had seen them loitering around the shops before, middle schoolers who'd grown up in trailer parks, cut classes, and didn't belong on this side of town. All 3 ran around in thrift shop gang stuff, mostly black and neon green hoodies and low-hung shorts with skater stripes. Because they knew their turf, they usually just wheeled by and yelled insults, which he hoped for the boy's sake they'd be doing now. Hey, bloodsucker, the biggest one yelled. Now there's an interesting turn of words, Callan thought. I haven't heard that one in a while. But those creeps had eyes and ears on the street and had probably heard something about the kid that Callan hadn't. The bigger one skidded to a stop and snatched up what looked like an umbrella off the pavement. What's this? He broke it over his knee. That's pretty brassy. Callan hesitated. When the sickly one went after him, feisty as he seemed, the hood shoved him down, and Callan was on it. He hurdled the hedge and ran straight toward the fight, the sickly boy now doubled up on the pavement. Callan wasn't sure anymore about what could happen. It had been so long since he had consulted Fred, in fact, but he did feel his shoulders repositioning and his jaws extending as he ran. This was a chance he'd have to take. He was turning, he just wasn't sure how much. By the collective reaction, plenty. One of the smaller hoods pointed and the other two spun around to look, eyes widening in disbelief. They bailed and ran for their bikes, all but the biggest, somehow thick-headed enough to try to stand his ground. Callan leapt onto the roof of the Woody and growled. That's all it took. The cast was a quick one, more like spitting the confabulation in their general direction, tailing them with it. This memory, what haunts your sleep, bind it here. This be its keep, and so it is. The sickly one had passed out the moment he hit the pavement, so Callan had a second or two to reset. He yanked off his Inverness overcoat and draped it over the boy, his first concern that the kid might go into shock. He wore a school jacket, one of the hoods having ripped his shirt underneath, and Callan could see bruises already coming up. Not a good thing. And I want to stop here and say, of course, anybody who's read at this point would really be saying not a good thing, because for a child like this with this kind of cancer, you shouldn't get hit or punched or anything. It can be very deadly. He should retrieve his cell phone from the car, Callan decided, when the kid came to. Did they take mine? The boy straightened his glasses and tried to raise up. Easy does it. Go slow. The only item besides the only item besides what once was an umbrella was a briefcase lying several feet away. No, they didn't. It's still over there. The kid sat, grimacing as he did. I'm good, he said, holding his side. He flipped up his clip-ons. So he has clip-ons on his glasses because he's sun sensitive. Who are you? I'm Callan. You're Callan Masters? The boy's ice blue eyes followed every move Callan made. And while he knew he'd have to hedge on some things, damn fillies, his legal name was still secure. That's right. My grandma thinks you're hot. She wants one of your paintings. Callan couldn't suppress a grin and prayed his teeth were back in due order. She should come by the studio sometime. We all were in there last week, but we couldn't stay very long, and I need to ask you, are there any paintings of Welsh ponies in your gallery? The part about Welsh ponies was more than just a coincidence, and certainly concerning. Would a kid this young read fillies? Callan shook his head. Just racehorses. The boy's shoulders sagged. Oh, well, I guess I better go home now. Is home close by? He pointed. Just over there. 4.2 minutes, if you Google. Callan helped him to his feet, and by the weight of the Samsonite, that's the briefcase, he wondered how the boy would manage. He draped his overcoat across his arm and picked up the briefcase. Shall I carry this? It's pretty heavy. I'll walk with you, okay? Okay. The boy brushed off his jeans. Callan scooped up the mangled umbrella. Toss this? The boy sighed. Yes, so. Callan tucked it under his arm. Do you know who owns that car? Callan shook his head. She's a beauty, isn't she? The kid's eyes flashed with frustration. I really need to find the owner, he said dully. Perhaps someone who goes to the church? They start walking. Of course, the car is Callan's car, but he's not going to own up to it. Maybe, he folded down his clip-ons. Don't you need to get back to your studio? Lunch break. Really? It's sort of late for that. Busy day. They walked for a minute or two in silence, Callan speculating whether the boy would come clean about his injury when he got home. Given he was sick already, he might try to hide it. Callan recalled doing something similar himself. What's your name? Tommy Lucas. Me and my mom just moved here from Chicago last week. She's an oncologist, and I go to school at the church. Really? I didn't know they had a school there. It's new for kids in special situations like me. I have a blood disorder. They say it's cancer, but it's really an anomaly, a curse on my bloodline. That's so. Yes, I come from a line of vampires. You don't say. Nobody believes me, but it's true. He bared his teeth. Those are some biters, all right. I have a cape and a casket in my room, too. Were kids nowadays always this chatty? It's a 4D player when I'm not using it for a bed or streaming TV. Standard adult model. Serial number 097B2M6D. It's way cool. Callan narrowed his eyes. You're really not joshing me, are you? Nope. Tommy hopped over a groove in the sidewalk. What grade are you in, Tommy? Third, supposed to be in fourth. But Mom and Sister Madeline didn't want me to stress out this year because it makes my red blood cells explode. Really? That sounds painful. Not so much. I just have to aim straight when I take a leak at Grandma's. So that's the last part of my little thing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I enjoyed that a lot. Thank you so much for reading to us. I really enjoy it when an author reads from their work. And we have some wonderful comments. We have Lori here. She says, great reading. I'm sorry, like that. You're a new author to me. Karen Wright says, where'd she go? Karen Wright says, very interesting. Karen Geerling says, wow, great reading. Elaine Sapp says, love it. Hey, Elaine, I didn't say hello to you earlier. I'm glad to see you here. So thank you, Julie. I am intrigued. And then there's a couple more comments I wanted to put up here. Cindy says, thank you for stopping to read to explain why the child could not be hit. Interesting read. So we enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The book now, I know it's available, of course, in print and Kindle. Now, is it wide? Is it in Kindle Unlimited? Can you let the readers know where they can find your book?
Yeah, on Amazon there is Kindle and paperback, and then I've recently aggregated it, I guess you would say, to Draft to Digital, which puts it out on Kobo and Nook and all the others, Baker and Taylor, etc. And then, of course, as I was talking to you earlier, I just auditioned a fellow to do an audiobook, and I think that's going to be really fun when he does that. He's done a great job of acting out all the different characters and really reads it much better than I do.
You did a good job. You did a fine job. You did. But you're right. You have to get that right voice for audio, and they have to be able to play all the emotions, the ups and downs, and it's a process to find that right voice. And when you know it, and it sounds like you found the right voice. You do. Your other books. Let's talk briefly on your other books. Do you have any copies of your other books next to you or close by?
Not right next to me. I'd have to run in the other room and get them.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't have a chance to ask you, but briefly, the 6 other books you've written, if you can just give us a little rundown on what they are, the genre, whatever you wanted to share.
So the first one in 2001 was, the title is Happy Tales. And what I did when I was going through divorce recovery, I realized that I'm not much of a process person. I hate processes. And so I'm happy if people can tell me, now you're in stage 3. Now you're in stage 4. Now, I like to see the stages. And so I really staged this book around part 1, part 2. Part 1 is, of course, the stages of going through a divorce. And part 2 is the stages of establishing new intimacy. But I've always been an animal lover. And so I took animal stories as parables, if you will, for each stage. And so it had to do with me meeting an animal and that being a picturesque of the stage. So it was a very out of the box book then, and it still is. And it's Happy Tales, How Pets Can Help You Survive Divorce. So that's the first one.
Interesting. I like the concept of that. And
yeah,
you did that.
Yeah. And that was back, I did it with a hybrid publisher. That was before self-publishing really took off. So Amazon was just getting started. And so that one is in paperback. I sell it on my website. Amazon still has a few used copies. And then once I've sold them all, I'll probably repackage it at some point for digital and so forth. The second one, let me think about that one. I may get these out of order, and forgive me if I do, but I wrote a book, children's book for reading grades 3 through 5, and it's called Hootie, and it's about an owl that my dad raised. It is inspired by that story. It's not a true story, but it's inspired by. And so, it had all the elements of raising the owl from a chick on up. And so there's that. I wrote a romantic comedy, and it's called When Pigs Fly Over the Moon.
Nice.
Because that's what she told him. I will love you when pigs fly over the moon.
I like that one.
But anyway, it has a companion country song that I wrote. And I had a good friend. I mean, Austin musicians, right? They're everywhere. And so I had a really good friend who did a wonderful progressive country song, When Pigs Fly Over the Moon. So that's also with that. That one's only digital. I haven't done any paperback for that because it's really a novella. It's not very long.
Okay.
And it's about two friends who have been friends forever, and then they get interested in each other. But he's like so fidgety. He can't figure out how, it's kind of this non-committal struggle thing that they're both going through, and then finally realizing that they need to grow up. And hey, the whole thing behind it is, if you love them, stop boot scooting around it. That's kind of the theme there.
There you go.
Then let's see. I did write, for those that are into metaphysics, I do have a channel book, and it's called Simeon. And I'm really thinking about, I'll just kind of give you all a heads up. You asked me what I was going to do next. I'm really thinking about revamping that whole book, because when I wrote it, I felt like it was all very personal for me. And I was really kind of struggling with this whole idea of even stream of consciousness writing or channeling. And so it was really more about reassuring me that there was something out there that was talking to me, but, it wasn't necessarily only me. And, but I think really for the, we were watching the news tonight, and I was just like, this world. Well, in the world that we live in, I can see how some of Simeon's stuff would be very, very powerful, but I need to, I hate to say dilute it, but I need to bring it down to the real world. And I need to make sure that it has a broad application. And so that's what I'm thinking about doing with the Simeon channel stuff, because I've got a lot more. I just haven't really figured out what's going to be the major theme and that sort of thing. So, but the first one that I wrote is really more about what is channeling and how to know, if what's happening and all that kind of stuff. Jane Roberts was a very favorite of mine. I've read a lot of her books. So, and let's see, what else? There's another one in there. Where am I on? 4 or 5?
I think you're on 5.
Okay. So no, I co-wrote a book with my son. His name is Seth. Yeah. And so when he was little, we realized that he was on the spectrum. Not bad, just enough that he wouldn't be able to fit into real school, public school.
Okay.
And so I chose to homeschool him. And of course, that really sidelined writing for me for a long time. But while he was little, I did write a little blog, and I wrote letters to him from the time he was 9 to about 11. I wrote a whole series of these little letters about, how to make friends, all the things that kids on the spectrum typically struggle with. And so as I was really looking at, his whole persona, someone suggested to me that he might also have some mystical qualities to him, that it wasn't just a spectrum disorder, because he could foresee things, and he would say, this is going to happen over there, and it would happen. And I was like, ooh, okay. So I wrote those letters, and then when he turned 20, and we were right at the beginning of the pandemic, he said, Mom, I kind of ripped through those letters when I was young. I didn't really, read them. I said, I'm going to read them now, and I'm going to answer you. I said, okay, go right ahead, knock yourself out. And so he did. And we created this book. It's like the letters when he was 9, and then 20 as he answers them and verifies or contests or whatever he does. And so we created this book, and it's called Letters. I ran out of titling energy for that. Letters. And the subtitle is Sidereal Insight for a 21st Century Mystic.
I love it.
Because the whole idea is, guiding him, whether he's a mystic or on the spectrum or both, guiding him along his path. And then he verifies that he was guided or he wasn't guided, or, yada, yada. So, yeah.
How old was your son when you published that book?
He was 21. Yeah, I think, I worked with my first editor, June Ford, on that book. And, we got it all together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, the title again, Letters.
Sidereal. Sidereal means, from the stars. Right. So it's kind of the idea of knowing oneself as far as, where you were born and your astrological sign, if you will, and how all of that becomes your energy and what you project out there and who you are. And so Sidereal Insight for a 21st Century Mystic. And the idea is, it's hard for mystics to grow up in the 21st century. It was hard enough in the 20th century.
I know. But it also shows what a brilliant relationship you and your son have and the way you communicate. That's brilliant. I love it. So congratulations. Do you think you'll ever write another one together?
I don't know. He hasn't shown. He is into level design here in Austin. He does all the video game stuff. I mean, it's just the perfect thing for someone like him. Is very techie, and so he's all into that, and climbing the ladder and that sort of thing. So he's really more his focus. Every now and then, like he'll go to a metaphysical fair with me or something. I want insight on this, but he really is more, I'm gonna be a human for a while. I'm like, mystical stuff.
Does he read your books?
He said that he was going to do an audiobook of Falling Stars, and I said, well, good luck. Because that is going to be a hard one for you to do. And he has a wonderful voice, but he's just too busy. So I don't know where his
Well, you have quite the resume with 50 ghost books and 7 of your own. They're all under your name, correct, Julie Rogers? They're all under your name. Mm-hmm. Is there a favorite genre that you like to write?
I really enjoy fantasy. I think I enjoy exploring the unknown, the stuff that, we just don't have really good answers for. We're kind of still figuring it out. And I guess, one day when we figure it out, we'll be bored. But I love the mystical and the magical. And kind of poking into that. I really do. I've enjoyed the fantasy. I think that is, and especially if it's something that is that magic that can happen right in our lives, this, for instance, this is up close and personal, but I don't care. I told you that, the Brahms Opus 49, number 15 or whatever, maybe saying the wrong one, but that is like a theme song in there. And where that came from was one day I was driving my son to a homeschool meeting down in Austin from Georgetown, which is 30 miles, I-35. And anybody who knows I-35 knows that it can be treacherous. It can make you sweat. And so I was nervous, I was driving him and he was playing around on his iPad and he started playing this Brahms opus, just on he wasn't playing the piano, but he was playing the taped version because he wanted to learn how to play it on the piano. And I was not in that car during that whole time that was playing. It like transported me. I was not worried about who might run into me or who I was going to run into. It was like this total dissociation. It was amazing. I mean, we were safe, but I was like, whoa, what just happened? And those are the type of things I like to explore. Was it just something funky in my brain that disconnected then? Mm-hmm. Or, with that song being given to me for a later date? And then I incorporated it in this book. So I don't know.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Mm-hmm. I want to put up some more questions. We're going to be wrapping it up pretty soon. Kleina says, I'm going to check out Julia's ghost stories. I love reading those.
Oh, yeah. And she reminded me the other book that I couldn't remember. Thank you, Kleina. This is another one that I really needed help with titling. It's called 7 Shorts. It is 7 short stories. And it just won the Global Book Awards silver in horror and bronze in dark fantasy. But there are 7 short stories in that book. So Kleina can go read those. They're fun. And, campfire stories type thing.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Well, Julie, this has been a fantastic chat. We're going to be wrapping up, but I do have a final question for you that I'd like to ask all the authors is, what advice would you give to an aspiring writer that wants to be a published author?
In this world, I will say, first of all, when you go online and you see all these things that are out there now to help writers and so forth, is realize that, and I hate to say this cynically, but realize that there are a lot of things that will try to take your money that may not be very helpful. And if there is a local writers group where you can actually physically show up or at least be online, that can help you kind of ferret out whether, this program is worth it or that is worth it or so forth. And so getting involved in a writers group, I think is so critically important when you're first starting out.
Great advice. You're going to be doing a giveaway. So I want to talk about our giveaways. Can you let the readers know what that is?
Well, I was going to give them a copy. I can give them a copy of any of the books. I don't care. I've got plenty of stuff. It's whatever they want. Have you taken a poll of what they like?
Well, what I can do is now you have 2 options to choose a winner. You can either scroll through the audience right now, but some have already left.
Okay.
Or we can talk after the chat and I'll let you pick a winner after the chat, or I can pick one for you. And then they can choose what book they want. How would that be?
I think that would be better, it's particularly those that had to go, because I know we had, and of course I was.
Yes, and technical difficulties. We're running a little bit later than I normally do because I'm making up for the lost time. And I don't want them to miss out because they were here the whole time, except for maybe like 2 or 3 minutes ago. Yeah. So we can discuss how to do your giveaway and give them a choice. And is it going to be a signed paperback?
Yeah.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. And it will be US only, correct? Because shipping is phenomenal anywhere else. And then I'm also going to be doing my giveaway that I do on every chat. Most of you know how this works. I'm going to be doing a $5 Amazon gift card. And if you can go to my author page and share this video, share it in your favorite group, share it on your personal page, share whatever you want, but tag me, and that way I can see that you shared. And for those that did that or do that, you are entered in the $5 Amazon giveaway. Julie, do you have any last words before we wrap it up?
Oh my goodness. I appreciate you having me on. I had no idea we were going to chat so long.
It's about an hour. But it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I apologize again for the technical stuff.
Yeah.
I got to ask you before we wrap it up. Did I break out a lot during?
No, not at all. And one of the things, don't feel bad about it, because KXAN down here had me twice, Studio 512, and both times technical difficulties, even using what I call the souped up TVU and stuff. There's something about, these programs just don't talk to each other sometimes. But
It's
you
just
were
weird
great.
that-
I mean, yeah.
I hate the angle of my phone, and I have to touch it like
I feel like
really
I'm not
gently.
looking this.
Yeah, I know. My eyes are over here. I'm trying to look at you. And
That's why I'm
looking
around a
down
lot.
at
Like,
you.
I'm not really wall-eyed. I'm
But
just
it's
kind of
so weird that it's the same connection in my house, whether it's on my phone or my laptop.
yeah.
Why is my laptop breaking up? It's weird. I just don't get it. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we found a solution, and we're able to push through it and have a great chat. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, readers, for joining us with the great questions. And I do want to mention too, Julie, I'm sure I missed a few questions, or maybe a lot. If you want to, if you have time to scroll through the comments, at your leisure on the author page and in my group, and answer any questions you might have missed. I'm sure the readers would love that. And readers, you have a great night. And we will be announcing the winner in a few hours tonight sometime.
Okay.
Take care, everybody. Good night.
Bye.